BP gets the green light for an untested strategy to tackle the Gulf oil spill. The death toll may be in the dozens after an explosion at Russia's largest coal mine. And the company involved with the recent U.S. mine disaster tries to meet its customers' coal demand.
From the Energy News Center in Washington, D.C., this is the Energy Report with Susan McGinnis.
And good afternoon, I'm Tyler Suiters in for Susan McGinnis. Thanks for joining us for this Monday edition of the Energy Report. The four-story containment structure that was supposed to cap the Gulf oil spill but did not over the weekend is now sitting on the sea floor far away from the site of the spill. BP is now considering a number of other options to control the oil there, estimated to be gushing at more than 200,000 gallons a day. BP could deploy a smaller containment box over the next several days, or it could try something the oil industry calls a junk shot. That is shooting debris, things like shredded tires, golf balls, other items as well, shooting them under very high pressure into the preventer in an attempt to clog it up and in turn stop the leak. BP also now has federal approval to continuously spray chemicals underwater in an effort to break up the oil. However, dispersants have never been tried at these depths of the ocean, and government officials are worried about the effect on the environment there in the Gulf. Meanwhile, Halliburton says it safely finished a cementing operation 20 hours before that rig went up in flames on April 20th. According to the company, work on the well was completed according to accepted industry practice and federal regulators, and a pressure test was conducted after that work was finished. The cause of the explosion is under investigation right now, but lawsuits already filed after that disaster claim it was caused when Halliburton workers improperly capped that well. Overseas this afternoon in Russia, 58 workers are now feared dead after a pair of explosions at that country's largest coal mine. The official death toll stands at 32, but the head of rescue operations there in Russia says it is unlikely that anyone survived the explosions. The first blast hit the Rosputskaya mine late Saturday. 359 workers were underground at the time, and that a second explosion occurred about 3.5 hours later after rescuers had entered that mine. High levels of methane gas remain in that mine, and that raises fears of further explosions there. The Siberian mine in question produces about 8 million tons of coal each year. And in the wake of last month's U.S. coal mine disaster, Massey Energy is now expanding its coal operations in Pike County, Kentucky, and in Buchanan County, Virginia. Last month, you may remember, Massey said it was drawing up plans to offset the loss of production from the Upper Big Branch mine. That is the mine that closed after the deadly April 5th explosion. Now, as a result, the Round Bottom surface mine in Kentucky began operations this month, and the Hurricane Branch Trace Fork mine in Virginia will start up in July. They are expected to produce a combined 750,000 tons a year of metallurgical quality coal. 3 other idle mines in West Virginia will be reopened by the end of July, according to the company. The Department of Energy is now funding a series of projects that marry concentrating solar power with storage. Secretary Stephen Chu says $62 million in federal funding will be divided among 13 companies to test equipment and materials, things like molten salts, to add storage to solar power systems. This technology captures the sun's energy as heat, which is then used to drive an engine or a turbine to generate electricity. You probably know how this works. DOE's target is to extend the output of CSP systems to 18 hours, covering the peak times of electricity usage. Abenhoa Solar, E-Solar, and Pratt & Whitney Rocketdyne each received more than $10 million for molten salt research. Abenhoa is already operating a solar storage facility and will test a solar tower that operates at a higher temperature that could improve the overall output for a given land area. E-Solar will build components for smaller distributed solar towers to heat molten salt. It will also test an electricity generator that operates using that molten salt. And Pratt & Whitney, which developed molten salt solar storage technology now being used by startup Solar Reserve, it will test different materials and also a more efficient power conversion cycle. It is the first investment by a Japanese utility in overseas nuclear power. Tokyo Electric Power is buying a $125 million, 9.2% stake in the Nuclear Innovations South Texas project. Asia's biggest utility has been consulting on that project ever since March of 2007. Nuclear Innovation is a joint venture between NRG Energy and Toshiba, and it plans to add a pair of 1,350 megawatt reactors near Houston by the year 2017. The reactors will be based on a design that TEPCO operates already in Japan. You know Manny, Mo, and Jack as the Pep Boys, and the three have a little less pep in their step right now. The company has agreed to pay $5 million to resolve violations of the Clean Air Act. EPA says the company imported and sold motorcycles, RVs, and generators manufactured in China that did not comply with environmental requirements. So Pep Boys will now have to export or destroy more than 1,300 vehicles and engines that are in stock. The company must also implement projects to offset greenhouse gases caused by the non-compliant equipment, estimated at 620 tons of excess hydrocarbon and nitrogen oxide emissions, and more than 6,250 tons of excess carbon monoxide emissions. This is the largest vehicle and engine importation case brought by the U.S. to date under the Clean Air Act. It is the largest both in terms of the number of vehicles and engines imported and also the size of the penalty that will be paid. While the U.S. is so busy focusing on the Gulf oil spill, actress Daryl Hannah is now speaking out against oil pollution in the Amazonian rainforest. I think you can tell which one she is here, right? At the annual shareholders meeting for Occidental Petroleum, Hannah spoke for a group of Achuar indigenous people. They traveled from their home in northern Peru to plead with Oxy shareholders and executives to clean up what they call contamination of their native land. Back in 2007, the Achuar filed a class action lawsuit against Oxy, alleging that the oil giant ignored industry standards and employed out-of-date practices, dumping 9 billion barrels of toxic waste into streams and rivers over the course of 30 years.
We're here to ask Oxy to take the responsibility to remediate the Achuar territory, to give the community the respect and respect their human rights, and address their medical concerns as well. And so I'm here to add my voice to stand in solidarity with them. I think it's important that everybody stand in solidarity with others who are standing up for a just cause.
Unfortunately, there's been a lot of destruction of the Amazon over the last 3 decades, often in the name of progress and development. A lot of oil wells, oil drilling, large-scale agriculture, large-scale cattle ranching, large dams, roads, and this kind of so-called development has led to serious deforestation and also disintegration of indigenous cultures and way of life. Many tribes have gotten extinct, others are on the verge of being threatened, and many are fighting for their survival.
Now here's where this case gets a little more complicated. Oxy transferred company operations in the region to the Argentinian company Plus Petrol back in 2000. And it maintains that any liability for environmental damage or medical problems suffered by those living in that region belongs to those owners and not back to Oxy. As we're wrapping up this Monday here in Washington, we'll take a look at the events scheduled around the area for Tuesday, and a big day begins at 10 a.m. Eastern. The Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee is holding the first of several hearings reviewing current issues related to offshore oil and gas development. Big guns from Transocean and BP are scheduled to testify at this hearing. That's in Russell tomorrow. The Senate Office Building. Clean Skies News will be covering that closely. At 1:30 p.m. tomorrow Eastern, the Civil Society Institute and Synapse Energy Economics is hosting a conference call on the future of U.S. clean energy. And then at 3:30 tomorrow afternoon, the New Democratic Network is holding a discussion at the Capitol on the future of electricity. Again, that takes place at 3:30 Eastern. And that is this Monday edition of the Energy Report. A reminder to you, you can reach us here in the nation's capital with your comments, your questions, your suggestions anytime. Here's the address at the bottom of your screen. It's contact@cleanskies.com. And you can also follow us throughout your day on Twitter and Facebook. For all of us here in the Energy News Center, we're glad you're with us. I'm Tyler Sudas, and you're watching Clean Skies News.